Should the UK return to imperial measurements? Welcome to Mark and Pete Live. I'm Pete, the clergyman, and with me as ever is Mark, the businessman. Well, Mark, should we?
Well, I must say, clergyman Pete, we've reached a point about weights and measures. And I'm not talking about the size of your girth. Yes, the United Kingdom, the government,
sizable though it is, yes,
has launched a review of how traders can use the UK's traditional weighing systems for goods. Now, British shops had to use the metric measurements under the EU rules with the option to show imperial equivalents, pounds and ounces, alongside. Now, some people, depending on your age, may say, oh, that's a fantastic idea because I remember the old imperial systems, whereas others would say, no, surely the idea of going back to the metric system is much better and it's much cleaner. And by the way, we love to engage with our European friends and many others around the world.
Of course we do.
But the thing with this is that the British just like to be different. And so, in my opinion, here's a little thought. It's all about pulling one's weight. The UK government now announces they might go back to pounds and ounces. Kill the kilograms as a measure. The imperial standard is what they treasure. Lose the litres and metric meters. Once Great Britons were world beaters. But the robust British have ancient bones and count on going back to flints and stones.
Yes, they probably will, yes.
Clergyman Pete, I ask you, are we going too far by going back to an imperial measurement? And is that really going back to ancient times?
Well, I don't see what's wrong with going back to ancient times. Well, sometimes when you take a step back, this is a mistake. So to the say, you can never go back, trying to go back and relive experiences. But there's something about the measurements that you use that get embedded in culture such that they're still there. It's the way that you think. It's similar to how if you learn a foreign language, you still think in your native language, at least usually, unless you become extremely fluent. But just generally speaking, that's the case. Now, in the case of weights and measures, I think I'm right in saying, and I don't have statistical surveys to back this up, but maybe the listeners can leave a comment as to whether they think this as well, whether this is their experience. I think most people, when they're told a distance in kilometers, think, how much is that in miles? When they're told a height in meters or in centimeters, they think, yeah, how many feet tall are you? And they don't really know how tall the person is. And I could go on to say, what is your weight and that sort of thing. Yeah. We still think in imperial measurements. So it would make sense to me to return to having weights and measures in the way that we already think. I think it would make people happier. It's just at such a base level. It's a return to a culture that has not been forgotten. And if you think about it, we're not talking about even the same people. People still think in those, the new people have come along and seem to have imbibed this part of the culture, as far as I can tell. People think in imperial measurements for certain things. I mean, not for everything, but for certain things.
Well, Clergyman Pete, now I'm going to come from a business perspective. Now, some critics say the review is nostalgic and could burden businesses. Now, here's an example. Asda chairman and Tory peer Lord Rose said promoting the use of imperial measurements post-Brexit would only please a small minority who hark for the past. And he went on to say it's complete and utter nonsense, and it would add cost to those people who'd have to put it in place. Yes. What I thought was interesting here is his observation, and we're going to talk about this with our own little anecdotes, but he added, we have got serious problems in the world, and we're now saying, let's go backwards. Does anybody in this country below the age of 40 know how many ounces there are in a pound? Well, here we go. Because, Clergyman Pete, now, there's a measure here, isn't there? Because we were talking just before the show, and we established something which was quite unique. I'm slightly older than you, but in the same academic year.
Yeah.
However, yes, folks, I want to say that I would rather that we didn't go back for the following reasons, if not for personal reasons. When I was at school and when I was taught by my parents, I was taught the imperial system. And of course, I mastered it and was really delighted at the fact that I was given responsibility to have pocket money and go and buy my own sweets, yes, with pounds, shillings, and pence. But the point here is that within, dare I say, less than 6 months of me learning the entire system, I was told to scrap it. And that there was a new system coming in, the metric system, and a new currency, and we were going to standardize on something that would align with our European folks. And so the idea of children having to go back again and learn a new system is very annoying. Yes. Clergyman Pete, obviously you didn't experience this.
We are in the same academic year, but we weren't then. If you remember, there was a change at the cut-off point. Yes. So at that point, you would have been in the year before, year ahead of me, behind me, whichever way it goes. But you would have learned something different to me. And I learned instead went straight for the metric system.
Well, there you go, you say, yes.
And I remember the existence of the old system, but we went straight for the metric system. And we learned how to learn these newfangled things, in which you had pence instead of a penny. And even though you still ate penny chews, they cost 3 pence. And and more.
Love a penny chew.
But there was that's all very well. The change in the money from a rather complex system to a more straightforward system is all very well, but you could change it without changing the basic metric, if you forgive the pun. It's the names that people remember. Like you say, people don't remember necessarily how many shillings there were in a pound. 20 is the answer. Or how many pennies there were in a pound. 240. But they do remember the names, pounds, shillings, and pence, which you could return to. There's no reason why a 10 pence piece can't be a shilling, and you have a penny, and then the pound. You could easily bring back the names. Now, is that nostalgia? Yeah, but why is nostalgia such a bad thing? I mean, we always used to say good nostalgia back in my day. No, I just joking. But I think that sort of part, the names embedded in the culture, if we bring them back, I just think it will make people happier.
Well,
I don't see why that's a bad thing.
It might make us happier to confuse our European folks, or even anyone else from around the world.
That wouldn't be a confusion. You just say, well, the 10 pence piece is called a shilling. That's all you need to do. You got a pound, and then pennies instead of pence. It's very, very simple. Yeah. Now, in terms of, however, of other things, I think use the imperial measurements for measurements within scientific scientific experiments. You already used a different system, the SI system, which is not necessarily the same as a metric system. For example, let me give you a quick example. If you use the newfangled metric system that everyone uses, distance, as you see on roadsides, would be in kilometers. I mean, at the moment it's in miles, of course. But if it were to go full in the metric system, it'd be in kilometers.
You'd have to drive along with a calculator.
However, the SI system of units, which is used in most of science, it's meters, not kilometers. It's different. And so what I'm saying is you have a separate system for science anyway. So that wouldn't make any difference. Engineering could still retain use of the metric system, but we're talking about use in everyday life, and I think that people still think in miles, people still think in stones in terms of weight, people still think in feet and inches in terms of height. It's just the way it is.
Well, it is ironic, isn't it, as part of our culture, to your point, is that we have basically had a legacy. We've really followed through in terms of retaining some of this system. And of course, in many ways, it's also about the way that we've engaged with other countries. The United States tends to sort of use pounds and does talk in the form
pounds
of
weight,
and so on. But again, I think that the other thing is, I come back to all our lovely friends and neighbours in the EU, which I know that you particularly admire, and that is how do we then engage with them? Because what does that look like on labelling and packaging and things like that? What would the standards be there? Do we have two standards? What's going to happen there?
Well, I think that the standards on packaging, if you went to the Imperial system, the standard would be Imperial. Yes, I think that's a good move. That's my opinion. Make your own stand. Be individualistic. Be different. Be British, and stand out. Don't be bullied. Now, my reason for that, it goes along with the reason for why I have a reason for going back into the old money system. I suggested a way earlier of doing it without having to change the actual numbers of it, just changing the names. But go back to the original system. I personally, I'd be happy with that. Let's go for it, because here's it. I hate the idea that someone makes a change that you don't want and they say, I've done it now, so you're stuck with it. Because if you stay with it for years, you'll never be able to change back, because it'd be too much effort, because too much disruption.
Which is what people are saying.
I don't like that. I think we change it back. We just say, no, well, it's that important to us. We're going to change it back. And I would strongly support certainly things like changing to the imperial system in how you sell produce, in distances on roads, which is still pretty much, it stayed there, hasn't it? And other sort of everyday usage, and changing the naming in the money, so you had shillings back. Yeah, I would support that. I would personally, I think you could change the whole money system, but I think that if you did that, it would just cause problems with the banks, because they're so heavily dependent on their computer system, which is international.
Well, indeed. Well, I'd love to hear what the public think. I mean, I will say, though, Clergyman Pete, if we did go back, I might be able to untap a little treasure trove of coins that I once kept.
Oh, really?
When
yes.
I was trading them from school. Yes.
You'll be able to spend
my coin
them.
collection could actually finally be useful.
Yes. Well, I guess that's all for this week on Mark and Pete. Let us know what you think. And before we have to put another shilling in the meter, that's it for Mark and Pete. Leave a comment. Catch you next time. Bye for now.